die, Father, is nothing less. Ever since I was a child, I had a feeling that something is missing in me. I want to know why I am here. Can any of us know that?
Become yourself. Then God and the devil don't matter.
I want to learn. I want to understand. Be careful. Can you find the force to enable these two quite opposite lives to live together in yourself? At any moment, the wolf can devour the lamb. And you must learn what it means to become responsible. This is an exact science. And that is why you are here.
Before known history to the unknown future. This is Red Ice Radio for the Seeker.
Think and know about you. One must strive to know.
Hello and welcome everyone listening from around the world. I'm Henrik. I hope you're having a good day so far as we are getting ready to take a glimpse into another perspective. As you might know, we pursue many different topics in an effort to learn more about pretty much everything. Nothing is really outside of our areas of inquiry. There are so many connecting subjects, and if you really want to know and understand, as opposed to dismissing out of hand because of your system of belief given to you by other people, you really need to investigate and check things out for yourself. As the saying goes, condemnation without investigation is the highest form of ignorance. And just because you already have come to a conclusion about a subject doesn't mean everyone else has. So keep that in mind here, as we are all on different paths at different stages in our inquiry and development. So what we try to do here is to provide you with an insight into people's work and research, so that you can decide for yourself what to make of it and if it's something that you want to pursue further. Also, if you're new to the program, take some time to check out our websites, redicecreations.com and redicemembers.com, where you can learn more about our program. Chris Thomas is with us today. He's an author and healer who describes himself as having been hardwired to the Akashic since birth. This gives him a unique perspective from which to describe the human path of development, how humanity first appeared on planet Earth, and what our destiny is. Our information on this has, says Chris, been distorted and misremembered over the course of millennia. Chris talks about the 13 races in the universe, which include non-physical, semi-physical, and physical form entities. We also discuss the soul origin of these entities, and Chris then explains how Earth is a unique physical manifestation. Much more to come. Welcome to Red Ice Radio, Chris Thomas. Good talking with you. Thank you for coming on. Hope you're having a good day over there in the UK.
It's pretty good, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting. We have a lot to talk about. You're, of course, a new voice to the program. I don't know if our audience have heard about you or your work before. Why don't we introduce you a little bit, and you can just kind of take us through the early journey, if you will. We don't have to be too long-winded on it, but it's always interesting hearing about the background, how people get into this kind of work. And, of course, we're going to talk more about the whole ET question and the supernatural element to our existence and everything else. But how did this road begin for you, Chris?
Sure. I think it was about when I was aged around about 7. For some strange reason, I suddenly found I could answer questions people asked me, even though I didn't have, obviously, any experience of life to be able to answer the kind of questions that I was asked on that kind of level. And so I didn't really understand it at the time and came back to it a few years later and realized that I had what you could describe as a direct connection into the Akashic. And around about that same time, I also began developing in healing work. So really for the last 30 or so years, I've been working as a psychic surgeon. And at the same time, actively researching through the Akashic to find out what I can about human history, how things have developed, progressed, and worked, and really how humans have developed, progressed, and worked. And it's been an interesting journey.
Well, I bet that sounds like a really interesting journey. So how did you kind of figure that out along the way in terms of the Akashic records? Was this something you had knowledge about beforehand, or did you had to look into this, do research on it, etc.?
Really, it was talking to other people, other psychics, mediums, whatever, to try and find out the kind of information that they could access and the processes they went through. And fairly quickly after I started looking at it seriously, I realized it was more of a self-realization, I think, that it was directly the Akashic. And then with further discussions with other psychics and mediums, then they basically confirmed that it is what I was doing, was this a direct connection. So in other words, I didn't need an intermediary between me and the Akashic. I can access it directly.
Like a psychic, in other words, you were the psychic and therefore could tap into it. So in terms of the whole, I mean, you've been talking a lot about the ET question and other life forms and kind of the situation of, the human race overall in the bigger picture. Is this something then that you've basically, you haven't had any direct experiences of these things? You're tapping into the Akashic record and that's where you're getting your information from? Or have you actually had experiences yourself with these things?
It's a bit of both. The word we have for it, I suppose, is I have been abducted twice, some years ago, which was an interesting experience. So it gave me a chance to have a good talk with the beings E.T. Watchers would call the Blues. Interesting bunch of peoples. So yes, I've had experience on that level. And also doing the healing works that I did. We had a lot of people come to us who had what I can only describe as implants in their system. And so in finding a way to remove those implants, I then encountered one of the races who has put these things into people without their permission and without their knowledge, and this is what the Akashic calls the Velon. So I've definitely had a lot of contact with the Velon, which most of which I didn't actually want. So they've been attacking me quite a bit over the years. So, as I say, it comes from both directions. If I can explain a little bit about the Akashic, because a lot of people misunderstand a lot about the Akashic. The Akashic, the word Akashic means record. That's all it means. It's an ancient Sanskrit word. And what it does, there are a number of levels of Akashic, if you like. So there's an Akashic on a human level. There's an Akashic on a solar system level. There's an Akashic on a galaxy level. And then there's an Akashic on a universal level. But all of them interact and interwork with each other. And what the Akashic does is to actually record events. So, like, for example, there's been an earthquake in Russia this week. And so that'll be recorded as an event that occurred on Earth. But what people do within their lives is not recorded within the Akashic. So there isn't an Akashic that says that you and I are talking this evening. There isn't a record of that within the Akashic. It only records the events that occur on a human level or on a planetary level. Because the memory of you and I having this discussion this evening will be recorded in your DNA and my DNA, because that's what DNA is primarily memory. But by being able to access the human level of Akashic and the solar system level of Akashic, then it means that I've been able to also access the universal level of Akashic, if you like. So I've been able to work my way through many of the events that have occurred within the universe as well, at large, which means that I've been able to track down the other races, where they exist, how they exist, and what form they take.
I wanted to ask you more about the DNA, because that's pretty interesting. I've read elsewhere that DNA can basically store data because it's so incredibly, rich and complex in that regard. And some people have actually speculated that the whole planet Earth, with the incredibly diverse genetic makeup that exists here with all life and everything, actually is a storage space for another race. What do you think about that idea?
Well, there is a great deal of speculation about what DNA is and what its function is. But from my own experiences of working with people, what I found is that it only takes about 3% of the DNA to run the body. This is, in fairness to the medical profession for once, this is what they have identified, is that there's about 3% of our DNA works as instructing the body what to do and the body cells what to do. Then there is 22% of the DNA that records everything that occurs within this lifetime. So if you think of somebody, let's say, who has the illness of Alzheimer's, they have very little short-term memory, but they can remember events that occurred 40, 50 years ago in their life with great detail. And that's because what they're doing is accessing the DNA memory of this lifetime. And then the other 75% of all DNA is past life memory. So everything we've experienced as a soul as we move through the centuries and the different lifetimes we've lived, all of that is recorded within the bulk of the DNA.
Do you think that in the DNA there is also a memory of the, what should we call it, the collective memory of the human race, if you will?
No, because that is what the Akashic does. That's the function of the Akashic, is to record that collective memory.
So how does one tap into this? How do you do it to tap into it?
Oh, well, for me, I get a lot of people very jealous about the way I do things because it's just simple for me. I just think what I needed an answer to, and I get the answer back.
That's convenient.
It has its uses. But on the other hand, there are meditations. There are very simple meditations that I've developed with other people and groups that I've worked with in the past that allows people to access the Akashic. It's not a difficult process. The problem is for most people is that their lives get in their way. All the day-to-day minutiae of the children, getting food on the table, doing your job, and all the rest of it.
Sure.
Means that all of that just gets in the way, and so people don't have enough time to sit down and really think about what it is they're doing or how they want to think about things in the past or other things around in their lives. But there are ways of doing it. As I say, there's a fairly simple meditation that anybody can access the Akashic.
Well, that's what I've heard as well, that it's not per se a privilege. It's just about having the intention and the willpower and allowing yourself to quiet your mind enough to stop the shatter pretty much and actually connect into the larger knowledge of the database, if you will, that actually is out there. So why don't we talk a little bit more about the Blues, and then I want to talk more about the Valon and what is going on there with their agenda and your experiences there. We can begin wherever you want.
Okay, sure. Essentially, there are 13 races within the universe. I know that doesn't sound like very much, but there's many billions of all of them. There are 6 non-physical races. In other words, they only exist as a consciousness, as a soul energy, so they have no physical form or density whatsoever. And these the Akashic, not surprisingly, calls the 6 non-physical races. They can freely travel around the universe. They don't need any kind of ships. They don't need any kind of food. They just draw on the energy that's available within the universe. And they get everywhere. They just, because they have a curiosity about everything and they want to learn about everything. And when this bizarre concept of Earth and humanity was first brought into being, they were curious enough about Earth so that a lot of the the souls from the non-physical races came to Earth. So in fact, about 99.9% of the human population are souls from the non-physical races. And, and those souls have come here to experience what it is like to be physical, because within their natural state, they have no experience of what physical density and physical life is all about. So a lot of human experience is purely and simply these beings, these souls, wanting to experience physicality for the first time. But then we also have 7, what the Akashic calls semi-physical races. Now these are beings who have a physical form and a physical density. And their soul is intrinsic to the physical body. So if you think about humans, we build for ourselves a physical body, and then at the end of that particular lifetime we die and the soul leaves the body. Whereas with the semi-physical races, the soul and body are one. And therefore they don't die, if you like, so they're pretty much an eternal existence. They're self-regenerating, so that although they have a physical, what they consider to be a physical body, they don't have illness, they don't degenerate particularly, and if they do start to degenerate for whatever reason, they can rebuild themselves from the inside out again. So essentially, they've got an everlasting body for as long as they choose to be in existence. It's the semi-physical races that most people are aware of in terms of UFO watching, for example, because they all need, all of these races, well, apart from one. So 6 of the races need physical craft to move them around the universe or the galactic system that they were brought into. Now I call these beings, they come from a soul origin. So let's take the Blues or the Pleiadians or the Greys or the Syrians or the Velon, whatever. That is their soul origin. But they have spread out over many galaxies and live on many different worlds, and so they call themselves by very different names quite often. And that leads to a lot of confusion, and this is where a huge amount of confusion comes in with the people who are researching UFOs and where these races originate. So I prefer to stick to their soul origin because it simplifies the whole matter. And because let's face it, there's one book I came across where somebody made a very determined effort to try and track down how many races there are or that have been identified or communicated with through channels. Human channels, and there's something like 5,500 listed, something like that. And so how do you differentiate between those? Because sometimes races identify themselves by different names, even though they're the same race. Because, for example, if you originate on, if you're a Pleiadian soul, but you originated on the planet Zog, for example, you're a Zoglith as far as you are concerned, but at the same time, the origin of your soul is compatible with that of being Pleiadian. So it creates a lot of difficulties around the place. So I've tried to stick to the soul origin name to try and simplify it as much as possible.
It's kind of like if you have people from Holland moving down to South Africa, and you're trying to figure out, are they Dutch or are they the new name that they have for themselves down there, the what do they call themselves now? I forget that, but that kind of level, right? You're trying to just pinpoint the origin of where they came from once, because if they go to another planet, they might even develop differently there. Is that correct? They might take on a different appearance, even develop or evolve in that way?
No, they generally don't take on a different appearance, because what they find is planets that are compatible with their body forms. So in the same way, if we ever broke out of our solar system and looked around for somewhere to colonize, then we would find a planet that would be compatible with our body form and our requirements. So this is basically what they do, is the same thing, is they just search around their galaxy or various other galaxies and seek out planets that are compatible with them.
Well, I mean, I want to talk a lot more here about the Valon, obviously, but I also at the same time want to talk about the what the human race is in all of this and planet Earth. You have a book called Planet Earth, the Universe Experiment, and a lot of people have a lot of interesting ideas about the reason for the planet and that it's kind of like a bridging point. Some people have said that it's an experiment to try to bring diverse origins of different races together in one spot to have a physical experience, pretty much to try to bridge the differences and all that. What do you think about some of those ideas?
Sure. Essentially, if you like, the first created of this universe are the beings that the Akashic calls the non-physical races. So we have 6 different races of beings who have no physical form or density whatsoever. And so they can interact with the energy patterns, but they do not have any physical senses. They do not know what it's like to say to smell a flower or to touch a piece of wood.
Right.
So there's no textual context to how they experience life in the universe. So they approached the I suppose what you could call the creationary source, and said, is there a way of allowing us to have more experience of what it's like to be within this universe? And so this idea was formulated that the semi-physical races were brought into being, were created, and if that wasn't enough, then a further physical density would be created to allow for full physical life and working with full physical senses as to how it is like to be very physical within this universe. So in many respects, that is the primary reason for the Earth, is purely and simply to find out what it is like to be physical. So if you look at it in terms of time, 100 million years ago was the time when the non-physical races were created. So most of the souls on Earth are literally 100 million years old. And about 30 million years ago was the time when the semi-physical races were created. But Earth was created at around about the same time. So our solar system, how can I put this? The solar system, you have to think of everything as being a consciousness. So although we see the Earth as a lump of rock with a few plants growing on it, really what she is, because it's a very female energy of the Earth, is that she is a consciousness. She is a conscious being, a soul, however you want to think of it. And each of the planets within our solar system is also a separate consciousness, and as is the sun. So if you like, the consciousnesses that are the planets and the sun within our solar system volunteered to see what it would be like to create physical life. If you look at the semi-physical races, for example, then the regions of space that they inhabit cover several galaxies. Whereas with Earth, and our solar system is the only place within the universe that experiences physical life. Nowhere else in the universe is life at the kind of physical densities that we experience will be found. So we are totally unique in that respect.
So what is things like dinosaurs and all this that allegedly is millions of years old? Do they have a part in this as well?
Oh yes, well, everything, all life, development of life throughout our solar system has a very big part to play in this whole experiment, as it were.
But you're talking primarily about the human, the development of the human and having other entities or souls or what will you spirits being incarnated into humans. That's what you're talking about. The ultimate purpose of Earth and our solar system is to find out whether
created souls can experience physical life, whether it is possible or not. And so along the way, a development program was carried out, if you like, to see where we developed. How could we start to develop physical life? And so, like everything else, you start small with something like bacteria or blades of grass or plants or something, and then you move on to animals and then development from there. So this is what the planets within our solar system did, because originally every single planet in our solar system supported life. So the idea was that every single planet, there were originally 13 planets within the solar system, not 9. And every single one of them started to develop life in the way in which the planet's consciousness felt life should be developed. So you ended up with 13 different solutions to the one problem. So each planet created flora and fauna that it felt suited the planet best. So, if you like, plants and animals are the creation of the planet that they live upon, not the creation of the creator or anybody else within the universe. They are of the planet itself. But in order to find out what would a human being look like, I mean, nobody knew. Where on earth do you start designing a human body? And so all these developments took place on all of the planets within our solar system to try and find a way of building a prototype human. How do we build a physical body that can contain the whole of the soul? And so all of these developments took place and through the solar system, and things like the dinosaurs and reptilian life forms led on to mammalian life forms. So the mammals became the predominant life form eventually, because there was something about this concept of live birth that was more compatible with human experience and human development than it would be, let's say, if we gave birth to eggs and children hatched out of the egg. So when scientists first started looking at the history of the solar system and the age of the Earth, what they came up with was a figure of roughly 25 million years. And so that everything on Earth has happened within that 25 million year period. And it does accord with what the Akashic says. So as far as the Akashic is concerned, life on Earth has been here for about 25 million years. And the age of the Earth is about 40 million years. Now, I know it is totally at odds with scientific theory on it, but let's face it, the scientists have dated the Earth as something like 4 billion years old.
Right.
But that isn't based on dating an Earth rock. That's based on dating a meteorite, which could have come from anywhere, literally anywhere within the universe. And so it's just when geologists got hold of it, they started looking at rocks and how they formed, and they ended up with needing longer and longer periods. But when you look at life and the formation of life on the planet, then the scientists came up with this figure of 25 million, which, as I say, coincides with the Akashic.
And then, that's interesting because, I mean, what is it? They talk about dinosaurs being around 25 million years ago, and then, 250 million years ago being, developed and then dying out, 65 million years ago as well. So,
something like that, yeah.
And they're always trying to, look in the rocks and make determinations of age. But I mean, let's be honest about this. It's tremendously difficult when we get down to those kinds of levels of strata and try to figure out in the hundreds of millions of years old. So this is a counteractive theory to that. And why not? How is it then with like the development of the human being as we know it today? There's this interesting point in this development where something seems to have happened, the so-called missing link. But there is one point where we go from some kind of primordial, being, if you will, Neanderthals or hominids or what have you, over to the current form of mankind. And there's a lot of theories about us being manipulated or genetically altered into existence. What do you make of all that?
Some of it's true, some of it isn't. If you look at the forms that these non-physical races take, for example, then they're basically hominid in form. So although they don't have physical density, the energetic outline of their existence is basically human. So there was a certain amount of template, if you like, already in place, which is that human sort of form. And the semi-physical races again take on roughly a human form, but more suitable to whatever planets they originated on. And so on Earth, when it came to development of life within our solar system, then we had a basic concept of what a human being should look like. And so the Earth experimented with quite a number of different forms of what could potentially turn out to be human beings. But there's nothing whatsoever to do with chimpanzees or apes. They're a useful step, if you like, to say, okay, well, chimpanzees are getting there, but they don't have a means by which they can progress further. Because it's no good creating something if that something can't evolve. So creation and evolution go hand in hand. So what the Earth did was to consider how a human body should function. Because you'd already developed various animal forms, so we knew the type of organs that were required, the type of skin, whatever else was required to bring about a form of life. Then humans developed from the early works that the Earth did. But we did have a lot of help from one of the semi-physical races who are themselves master geneticists. And they hold a record of every form of life that exists within this universe or has ever existed within this universe. And they can recreate that life on another world. They can manipulate it, alter it, whatever it is that's needed to be done to alter the basic form to the energy patterns that exist on the other planet. So they are masters at what they do. They are absolutely brilliant at what they do. They come from a galaxy we don't have a name for. We've just given an astronomer's catalogue number to, which is NGC 584. Which I understand is, if you look at the night sky, to the constellation of the Pleiades, NGC 584 is under the arc of the Pleiades, but about 30 galaxies distant or something like that. But they're amazing little people, they're brilliant at what they do, and the Earth and all the planets within the solar system have worked with this race over the millions of years that they've been trying to develop life and evolve life and work with it. So there has been a little bit of help. But the Earth developed what you could call 6 prototypes, I suppose. This went from Gigantopithecus, which was something like 9 or 10 foot tall, would that be 2.5 to 3 meters tall, right the way down to a pygmy form, a very much shorter, smaller form, which is only about 1 meter high. And you had various forms of life in between, various sizes. There were even aquatic forms, amphibious forms developed at certain times. So, that could be the origin of the concept of mermaids, for example. Mm-hmm. But the Earth experimented with different forms, different sizes, different heights, whatever. And then, unfortunately, about 3.9 million years ago, there was a disaster within the solar system. And because 2 of the planets, again, if you think of it as a consciousness that can make decisions for itself, 2 of the planets decided to leave the solar system. They didn't want to continue with this strange physical experiment that was going on. And in doing so, they, essentially the best way I can describe it is they exploded. And so this is why you have the asteroid belt between Earth and Mars, and between is it Jupiter and Jupiter? No, it's the Oort cloud, I think it is. Anyway, there's two asteroid belts, and this is the remnants of the planets. These two planets that decided to leave.
So no cosmic collision or incoming planetary body or ancient space war or anything like that?
You mean Nibiru?
Well, there's tons of different theories, of course, and names on it as well. But the idea that the cosmic catastrophe was, in some regard, spawned because something was entering into the solar system. This is a different take on it. That they, you're saying that the planet consciously exploded because it didn't want to be here anymore.
Yes. So that's what happened to two of them. The other two also decided to leave, but they'd seen what had happened with the first two and sort of literally took themselves out of the solar system. And what they've been doing is slowly disintegrating ever since. Now, we've got evidence of this one because NASA's far-seeing telescope, whatever they called it, not the Hubble, but there's another one, said there's evidence of a gas giant planet just outside of the solar system, which they've christened Taichi. And so what is out there is these two planets slowly disintegrating, turning back into their energy patterns. So there is that extra planet outside of the solar system. But as far as our solar system is concerned, when these two planets exploded, they caused massive disruption throughout the whole of the solar system. Effectively, they destroyed most of the life on all of the other planets. Earth managed to survive, and what she did was to adopt part of one of the planets as the moon, because we didn't have a moon prior to this explosion occurring. So the moon is there because the Earth wanted, well, I'm not entirely certain what she wanted to adopt the moon for, but there you go, she did.
Okay.
And so the moon is sitting there and having an influence on Earth, and the Earth is influencing the moon and all the rest of it.
Well, allegedly there are stories from mythology that is describing a time allegedly without a moon, and then all of a sudden, something arrives in that capacity and creates different conditions on the Earth, pretty much. So that's interesting.
That's right. So as far as the Akashic is concerned, that's essentially what happened. Unfortunately, with a lot of these theories going around, is that people tend to embroider them and make a romantic image, if you like, of what's going on. Whereas what the Akashic does is stick to the facts and the hard facts, and so there's no embroidery, there's no wishful thinking or anything like that. So all I can really talk in is just on a factual level, if you like.
Well, let me ask you this, and it might be somewhat difficult then, but let's say, as you said before, that not, conversations or I guess you would encapsulate in that even emotions are not recorded into the Akashic of the human level. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
And so what if we have an event taking place, let's say, let's be more kind of, closer to the current timeline about this, and let's say we have a terrorist attack or whatever, something explodes on the planet and causing, death and mayhem, what have you. Then if those intentions or emotions or whatnot are not recorded from the human being, the Akashic record won't have a record of why this actually happened, just that it happened, correct?
Not entirely. It'll have it'll have a record of why it happened, but not the emotions connected with it, because emotions are very much a human thing. Right. And so human memory or the human DNA records the emotion of the event, but the Akashic records that the event occurred. But it will have a reason for it. A reason for it, okay. So we can effectively tap into that to try to understand historically maybe why certain things have happened, or why certain characters or persons in history have done a certain thing. That's right, yeah. Okay, well, that's always very interesting. I wanted to
definitely continue if you want to talk more about the Earth on a whole and the path and all that. But I want to try into it again, the Valons, we don't miss out there. I want to ask you who they are, what their agenda is, and how they're tied to the human experience.
Sure. Okay. The Velon are a semi-physical race. They originate in a galaxy. If you look up at the night sky, the galaxy is behind the constellation of Sagittarius, but about 38 galaxies beyond the constellation. And although the Velon have access to several galaxies like the other semi-physical races do, they've tended to stick within their own solar system. Now, the solar system has 2 suns, so it's a binary system, and 8 planets. 3 orbit around one sun, 4 orbit around another, and the 8th planet orbits around both suns. I'm trying to think of the names of the planets now. And there's a Marduk, there's a Tiamat, and a Nibiru. Mm-hmm. Nibiru is also called Anu by the people who live on it. The Velon have 6 different races. So in the same way as, you could be Australian, Japanese, German, Russian, whatever, then the Velon would divide themselves up along those kinds of lines.
Right.
Although, in fact, really it's more along a religious division. So more like Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever. And there's 6 of them. And the names that they give each other are Jonan, Junda, Oa, Mila, Hathor, and Anunnaki. So those are the 6 Velon races. Those are the names that the 6 Velon races have given to each other. And the Anunnaki live on this 8th planet, the one that orbits both suns within the Velon solar system. And this is why the planet is either called Nibiru or can be called Anu as well. And they've had various disasters within their own solar system. In many respects, the solar system consciousness, as it were, has given up. They've been around for 30 million years, and they're going to be bored with what they do. That's very flippant, but I mean, that's what it amounts to. So in other words, the solar system is going into a decline. And for some strange reason, they're the only semi-physical race that has ever remained within their own galaxy, their home galaxy. None of the others have. They've all been outside of their own galaxy, but the Velon, for some strange reason, have always stayed within their own galaxy. If you stand on the main planet, what you find is the ground is a sort of bluish color, and the sky is a yellowy color. And it's almost like permanent twilight because the 2 suns are going into decline, so there's no daytime, nighttime cycles like we have on Earth. What they have is almost a permanent twilight. They have stripped the planet of all life, so the only beings that exist on that planet are the Velon themselves. The Velon. There is a division across the 6 different races. The Velon vary in size from being about 2.4 meters tall all the way up to about 5 meters tall, depending on which race they are. How can I describe the way they live? They live in what you could think of as tower blocks, and they're very technological. So the tower blocks contain a great deal of technology to make life easier for them. They've developed a computer programming system. Again, that's an analogy. It's not really a computer in the same way as we would think of a computer, but it's the nearest description I can come to about it.
Right.
And the hard drives of these computers are something called a May. It's spelt M-E, but pronounced May, as in the month of May. And there's two different levels of these Mays. One is in the same way as we would use a computer program or a hard drive. So you could take one of these Mays, slot it into a slot in the dashboard of your car, let's say, and that would then program the car to drive wherever it is you want to drive to. The higher level of May, if you like, performs is capable of performing many, many functions and can work even on a soul level as well. So they're immensely complex, very powerful computer-like systems.
Let me quickly just put in a question. Does that mean that the technology that we have currently on our planet is actually it's built either, from attained technology or with the intention that it's supposed to work with theirs? Is that correct?
Well, we have various levels of technology on the planet. Most of it, on this planet, is developed from military programs.
Yeah.
And where the military has obtained a lot of the technology from is from alien sources, whether that's Blues, Greys, Pleiadians, or the Velon. So we've got a mix of technologies on the planet.
Okay, so it could be a partial compatibility, in other words.
The biggest thing about human technology is that it is destructive. So in other words, everything we do to build something involves the destruction of something else. So, even doing something supposedly simple, like taking oil out of the ground, uses a massive amount of energy in order to do so, creates massive pollution, and then requires massive more amounts of energy to refine that oil into something we can use. If you look at the semi-physical races, what they do is work with what is available on their planet. So if you want to build a flying saucer, for example, they don't mine material in the way that we would. What they do is they work on very psychic levels. And so what they do is create a psychic template for the shape of the craft they want to build. And they use living plants to grow that shell. So in other words, the plant grows and expands itself around the psychic template that's been built. So it's like an organic metal, almost. So that's the kind of technological level that the semi-physical races work at, which is on a very natural level. They only use whatever is available within their environment. They don't actually destroy anything. And if you look at the propulsion systems that all the semi-physical races use for their craft, they use the natural flux of electromagnetic energies that actually hold this universe together. I mean, forget about gravity. Gravity doesn't exist. What we have is a conscious universe that's held together with electromagnetic forces. So they use those electromagnetic forces as a means of propulsion. So in other words, they're not taking from anything. They're not destroying anything on their planet. They're not creating any pollution anywhere. They're using what is naturally available. And the same more or less applies to the Velon. The Velon technology is based on that level as well. For example, these May computer disks are actually made from something like yeast. That, again, that's the nearest I can come to in terms of what we have available on Earth.
So a biological technology.
It's a biological memory system. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. So they put the ingredients, whatever their equivalent of yeast would be, into a mold, and they psychically program that mold. So as the mold grows into the shape of the disc, it takes on the imprint of whatever it is it's being programmed to do. So again, it's a very natural technology. Although the uniquely Zavilon on their home planets do mine for minerals and raw materials, but they don't destroy the planet. Whether they've got some kind of factory system which is programmed. Say you wanted to, create a computer. So you would program this factory to say, what we want you to do is create a computer, and here's a psychic model of the ingredients that are needed or the components that are needed. And the factory will then extract the raw materials out of the ground and pull them together and create the device that you've asked it to create. So they have the technology on that kind of level, which is a little more advanced than the kind of technology we have.
Yeah, sure sounds like it. can grow
Sounds a bit more fun to me.
Well, exactly. Well, they are heading into that direction allegedly with the, computers based on neural networks and biological computers and all kinds of crazy, wacky, scary stuff. So we'll see. I just thought it was interesting if there's, in any regard, if our development of the technology on this planet, kind of, as you alluded to, is in some regard developed because we've had, it's been captured, attained for, during crash DTs and, UFOs and stuff like that, that it's something that has inspired us, that naturally technology has not been something that we have developed, but we've gotten ideas from the outside, if you know what I mean, Chris.
Yes. But also the non-human races have provided us with technology that is kept hidden because it doesn't use oil, for example, and of course oil is the one thing that everybody makes massive amounts of money on.
Right.
So if you have technology that doesn't use oil, then nobody wants to know about it. Like Tesla's work at the early 1900s, he developed energy structures that required virtually no input, and there was no pollution, and everything was free. But because it was free, Tesla and his work was destroyed. So, we've got those things going on as well. But,
oh, sure.
These races have provided us with technology, but it's been kept hidden from the population because of whatever, political reasons or financial reasons, whatever.
Well, it would mean, to a certain degree, freedom and independence from the centralized global governmental system and everything else. And since,
Exactly.
a lot of this is about control and subjugation of the human race, that's where we find ourselves at this point. But, Chris, we're going to take a break here in a little while. We're going to continue, of course, our discussion, talk more in the second hour. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of your books and material and website and such. Before we do that, though, you have something like, I believe, 11 books out there. And for people who are curious, to learn more, where can they go to read more about your material, your work, and pick up copies of the books?
Well, Amazon don't stock them. They seem to have been banned by Amazon.
I saw a few on Amazon. I don't know if they're really sold by secondhand, though, but,
Yes, they're advertised on Amazon, and you can buy second-hand copies on Amazon, but they've never, ever placed an order with a publisher.
Okay, yeah.
No, the best place to get them all, because they stock all of them, the best place would be, it's a book club, people, called Cygnus, which is Cygnus. So Cygnus Books. And their website is cygnus-books.co.uk. And they stock all of them, and they do a very good credit card system and mail order system as well.
Do you have a personal website where you write right now?
No, I used to have a personal website. People tried hacking it so many times that I gave up on it.
No, that's too bad.
Well, you can only take so much of this kind of hassle and harassment.
Yeah, well, okay, well, that's good. We'll reference people to cygnus-books.co.uk. In the meantime, we'll take a short break right here. Stay with us, Chris, and we'll be right back. That is our first hour. We have one more to go, and in the second, Chris expands on the beings called Valons and their relationship to Earth. He'll also talk about UFO activity. Chris explains how the blues and the Greys are attempting to develop a physical body form. Then he shares his thoughts on what it would take for humankind to experience a global, vast shift in consciousness. Later we discuss the current economic system, Agenda 21, and considering all the depopulation talk, a different number on the world's population. Don't miss the second hour, available at redicemembers.com. Sign up for a subscription, get full access to our archives, and encourage independent media to grow and expand. Thank you. Next on Red Ice Radio, we have Maria Wheatley on the worldwide energy grid system, dowsing, and measurements that are being done around the UK with some surprising results. We're going to talk more about Stonehenge and Avebury, among other things. Later we have Ralph Ellis, also Troy McLaughlin with Ted Holden, and our last part with Ulla Dammegård. Thank you very much for listening. Hour 2 is next up. We'll see you on the other side.